I know that term from the rap world, like based, but I didn't know what based means, but I've heard it used a bunch of times, and it's always a positive. Based is all about being yourself and not caring about what anybody else thinks. I don't care, I'm based.
Petty for president, racing and leveraging, facing competitors. I'm not the regular. Petty for president, you are not ready yet. Serving, I represent, trust me with all respect. Petty for president, move and protected, yes. No losing delegates, seats in my homies' meds. Petty for president, black be my leather, yes. No speech impediment, TV like Letterman. Petty on podium.
What's up, man?
There's the man, the myth, the legend.
Yes, dude. Thanks for letting me reschedule. I appreciate it.
Dude, I appreciate you coming through, man.
Oh, no problem, dude. I'm happy to do it, bro. I love the long form chats. I feel like there's so much more like you can really dive into the right things if the person has the right thing going on. I've been on some podcasts with people where I'm just like, this is not conducive to what the people want, you know?
Yeah, so my whole idea with this podcast, so this is actually do two. I do one called Lord Petty Podcast, which is just kind of me talking about like politics and philosophy and just kind of comedy and all that kind of shit. And so this one's called Base Talk, where I talk to basically the people kind of behind the content. You know what I mean? So my goal was kind of, because we're all out here talking about the world. We're talking about butthole Biden. We're talking about the occult. You know, we're spreading the message. But a lot of times people don't really get to know, okay, like, who is this person? Where did their views come from? How did they form the opinions? What is the creative process? And so that's why I'm really happy you're here, man, because straight up, I don't know if I've ever told you this directly, but I mean, I've talked about you on other episodes, how you were the guy where, you know, because I kind of fell into the space on accident. I did a couple memes and I found like Richard Ratboy, and I came across your profile, and you're one of the only guys out there just saying screw it and sending it with your face, like straight up just making videos, ripping on people. And at first I was like, all right, who's this Chad? You know, I was like low key hating. I was like, all right, this guy's funny. He's good looking. I'm not trying to suck your dick right now. I'm just saying, like, I was kind of like, okay, who's this guy? And then I actually listened. I was like, man, this guy's doing something. So I became a huge fan right off the rip, man. So it's cool talking to you.
That's awesome, dude. I appreciate that so much. I think that, in all of my days, I've realized that, you know, the memory and doing the thing that other people are not doing is like the advantage. It's like, I didn't see so many people being like, here's my face straight on. So there'll be someone like a Drano, for example, that has millions of followers, but it's like, what percentage of those followers have even seen his face move? You know, right. You're talking like a fraction of people. So it's like, if you were to get popular always using this, people will remember a face their entire life. There's like examples of a kid remembering a person's face from when they were a child and seeing them 30 years later. So that's like the power. It's like, if we could just do it like this, it's almost like there's your brand, you know?
Yeah. And that's, you know, I kind of noticed when I was just doing the subliminal memeing, my stuff was growing a lot quicker than when I started putting my face out there. I mean, it was more rewarding, and I kind of figured, okay, why am I saying things that I'm not going to show face for? That made me feel kind of like a fraud. You know, I'm not talking shit about anybody that's just making memes, but I just wanted to, if I'm going to say it, I want to be about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I did notice once I started putting my face out there, the growth stopped, because I figured somebody just looks at my face and goes, "Oh, I don't like this guy."
Did you say it stopped?
Well, it didn't go as fast. I mean, when I was just making anonymous memes, you know, you're kind of using the Drano thing, for example. Like these meme accounts, they just grow super quick because everybody loves memes. And that was always kind of my goal with the memes in the first place, was to use them to market. So eventually I was going to do the pivot. But after I fell into the space that I'm in, I was kind of scared to do it because I was living in Seattle and I didn't want to get my car keyed and shit like that. But like I said, you were literally the first person when I started getting into this nook of the internet where I'm like, all right, Bobby Sauce is sending it, man. Like, he's still out here walking around, jogging at 3 a.m. with the weighted vest and alive. So
yeah, I mean, I think that this is the thing, dude, is that the value of the one-to-one exchange, like every view, I think I said it on my live stream last night, is like every view is not the same. If I get 5,000 likes on a video of me talking with my face for 30 seconds or a minute versus 5,000 likes on a nameless, faceless meme, those are not the same thing. Like if you're going to like a video of me talking for 30 seconds, chances are you're going to watch the full 30 seconds before you attach yourself to other people that you follow and put your name. This person likes this, so it requires like commitment. A meme, you could process it in 20 seconds and you're gone. So it's like, it's not one-to-one. Even though your numbers may have gone down, your impact likely went up. And there's videos that I make that are stupid that get a ton of views, and other ones that I make that are very well thought out and very impactful to the right people that don't go that far. And I used to get hung up on that, but it was when I kind of realized that it's not one-to-one, and you have to, like, if you were to look at the sum totality of all of your stuff, it's like, does this fit the body of work that I want to put out? It's like the numbers are gone, and like sooner or later, Instagram is not going to matter. It's going to be TikTok, honestly. And TikTok is going to overtake Instagram way more than it already has. So it's like all of those views will be kind of nothing in the end. It's like what matters is who is impacted by the body of work in total. Because if you start being a slave to the numbers, you kind of stray away from the thing that makes people come to you in the first place. You're, instead of doing what you want to do, you're doing what you think you're supposed to do. And interestingly enough, that's not why you got attention in the first place.
So when did you kind of see, did you ever make any sort of third party content like memes or any sort of shit posting like that? Or were you just always straight up send it? And how long did that take for you to gain traction?
I didn't make any memes, but I would reshare them to kind of like keep content flowing. The way that the story goes is I had an Instagram account with like 1,100 followers, like 900 followers, maybe even less. That was just friends. And I started making, my folks and I bulldozed the house next door to me in Florida, and we were going to build a spec house, build a house with the intention of selling it. And I was like all stoned one night, and there was a porta potty out in the front yard. That was literally the first thing they put down after they bulldozed the house. So you have this empty lot, and there was just a porta potty there, and it was like pandemic. And I'm just like, that's hilarious. The first thing they put is a shitter. So I was all high at like 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. And I went outside to the street, and I was like, yo, if anybody needs to take a dump, like come through, free dumper, like it's fresh, it's clean, it's on the street here. Here's the address, like come take a shit, just kind of as a joke. And the next day I got double the story views that I would usually get. I was getting like 100 story views, and I got 200 or something. And people were DMing me, my friends, like, that's hilarious, do another one. So the next day I went out and did like a tour of it. I'm like, oh, we got a fresh TP roll, whatever. And I just decided I'm going to document this process for the next 9 months. So I went out every day at 5 o'clock when the workers left, and I'd be like, we got a stick, we got a tube, we got a cinder block, whatever. And I documented the entire building of the house. And towards the end of the house, I started to run out of content, and the politics was kind of picking up, something that I was already really interested in and paying attention to. And we were getting into like the throes of the campaign. And I'm just like, this is such a laughable, just like hellscape of garbage. Let me throw out a few political posts. Interestingly enough, some people were like, look, I don't like your political views, but like, I don't want to follow your account if you're going to talk about politics. Can you make a separate account? So I made another account for me personally, and I just created all of my political and comedy videos on the one. And once they were separate, I didn't feel as, I guess the best way to put it is, I didn't feel like I had to do things that I would be known to do. It's kind of like when you go to a new place, like if you move to a new city, I never had a mustache. And if I was to rock a mustache in Connecticut, where I'm from, as soon as I got to a place, people would have been like, oh, like, look at this, look at the mustachio. They would have ripped on you. You don't feel comfortable. You're like, this is not something that I would be known to do. So once the accounts were separate, it was like going out in a new city with a mustache. People don't know anything about you other than you're the guy that happens to have a mustache. They probably won't even notice. So you can explore a little bit more and feel more comfortable doing things that would be generally considered to be outside of the box. So once I started making the political videos, they didn't really get much traction until August 20th of 2020. The night after the first night of the DNC, I made a video that got 60,000 views, and the rest is history.
Were the reels out yet? Was there the Discover features that we have now, or?
No, I had made it in my story. Actually, I just made a bunch of story posts and I was like, yo, is anybody seeing this? Like, this is such a laughable, stupid. I didn't even think much of it, honestly. I just posted it and I was like, that's actually really funny, but I didn't even think to make it into a video. And I had gotten that same story had like 1,500 views, which was 5 or 10 times what I would usually get. And I was like, holy shit, I should save this somehow. So I saved it down and then posted it a video. And then it like immediately went nuts. It had 1,000 or 2,000 in the first couple hours. And I was like, that's awesome. You know, and I was picking up like 50 or 60 followers. I was like, that's amazing. What an interesting experience. And then when I woke up the next morning, it had over 55,000 and I had like 4,000 followers. Yeah. By the time I woke up, and I was like, oh my God. And it was kind of like, it was almost like I didn't anticipate it to do that. I didn't even know how one would go about doing that. But as an internet person, I was like, this is real. These are real numbers. The marketplace is speaking. What if I could do it again? And if I can, I have the next 4 months of objectively the next 4 months until this election where people are going to be hot on this content. Could I make political comedy videos for 4 months? And what would happen if I did? And it's just started ripping because everybody was tuned into it. And as a result, I was able to ride that wave to probably faster than most people would be able to advance because the content was just so hot at the right time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like the content is obviously really good, but then also you timed that perfect. I mean, that was right before they've always been kind of censorship, whatever, but you really rode that wave at the perfect time and got that message out there. Because like I said, once I found guys like you, I didn't think anybody was saying the shit out loud. So yeah. So if you're one of those people, so when people find that, they're like, oh, I think like that, somebody's finally saying it. Mm-hmm. And so what's your, do you still run the other page, the one you were documenting the dumper with, or did you kind of just completely abandon that and go full on? No, that is this page.
Oh,
so okay.
If you go way back into my content, actually, in fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, I have a whole series, like 100 video some odd series where I talk about the house, and it literally is episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and they're not all there. There's like probably like, I think there's like 90 episodes, 90 separate days that are there. And I still have another like 20 or 30 that I just haven't uploaded yet.
So you're so proficient with the amount of content you put out and all the platforms you're on. You have, your merch store. So, I got a bunch of questions about all that, but I kind of want to keep it in line. So it sounds like you kind of stumbled into things, or did you have like an internet and a comedy background, or was this just kind of the universe pointed you in a direction and you optimized on it?
It's kind of interesting. I always kind of knew, like, I'm not a big Apple fan or a Steve Jobs, like, oh God, I wear the black turtleneck, but there's this one quote from Steve Jobs that's amazing, which is, it's hard to connect the dots looking forward, but it's much easier to connect the dots looking backwards. I believed that I was something special and had something greater to offer the world, but I didn't know how I would go about doing it. I just knew that I had to go in this direction. I knew that I wanted to work for myself, be independent, and I wanted to be locationless. I knew that even as a young man when I was 18. So I was like, how do I do this? And I was always attracted to the internet and building websites. It was something that I had done as a hobby and had actually taken off when I was in high school. So I was like, I'm going to build a web development company. I'm going to build websites. I'm going to monetize them. And that's going to be my ticket out. So I built websites from when I was 18 to about 21. And then when I was 21 is when I started doing it full time. That was my last full-time job. And I built websites. I built small, medium-sized websites from 2009 to 2020 full time. Over the course of that time, I learned everything there was to know about business. I was sitting here at my computer or at my other apartments that I had rented at my laptop, and I built websites. I learned graphic design, web development, e-commerce, Shopify, WordPress, HTML, PHP, Java, every part of the online marketing sphere, from social to search engine optimization and everything in between, because I was doing it for clients. And I eventually realized that I can't have an expensive job. I don't want to be an entrepreneur that just works for a amount of cash and then goes on to the next. I have to find cash flow, something that took me a long time to do. So I started buying websites and rehabbing them and then getting them to cash flow as a way of kind of phasing out of the web development business. But I wasn't able to make enough money to only do that. So I was like right at this inflection point in 2020 where I was like, I love building websites and I love the internet, but I'll never get rich doing this. I'll only get rich buying cash flow and doing things that are smarter, not harder. Working hard is not necessarily being efficient. So I was like, I need to buy cash flow. I need to find a way to create something that I don't have to just tee up a website and work through the night like I used to. So I was at this inflection point where I was trying to figure out, how do I get away from building websites? I don't know how to do it. And that's when the video hit. And I thought to myself, well, my investments, the sites I've been buying and cash flowing, are making enough that if I could create another flow of income that could supplant the web development, I could stop doing that entirely, hold my properties, and then do something else. And then aside from the money, it was like, this is a purpose thing. How fun. I could be a comedian. Like, that would be hilarious. And on top of it all, what if I could actually contribute to the mix? Because when you're in business, you kind of think to yourself, I can't talk about business. I can't be a business guide until I have business experience. I have to have a multi-million-dollar business. Whereas with political commentary, you just have to be a person that pays attention. My opinion is just as valuable as a 55-year-old person's opinion. I may not know all the historical precedent that connects A, B, C, and D, but I can still have a valid opinion on what's going on through the lens of a person with limited understanding.
Yeah. And because you've reached the point where you have such an influence that when you're putting an idea out there, it catches on. So there's a lot of purpose involved with what you're doing. So it is kind of crazy. I forget exactly that saying you said, looking back, the pieces make sense, but it just kind of seems like the perfect storm for you, man. And it's working. So all your merch designs, because I know you work with another brand, or is that the Patriot?
That's my friend Ian. I'm like a partner. I am great friends with him. So I wear his shirts every Friday. It's Patriot Friday, and I help to push the gear. I have a little coupon code, a little affiliate code, and he's been very helpful to me along the journey, and me to him. And we just want to see each other win. So we rock each other's stuff.
Well, that's awesome, man. Did you feel like, was your social life at all affected when you started coming out and started saying the things that you're saying?
Yeah, tremendously. But like all good things, they come with challenges that, again, are hard to connect looking forward, but easier to connect looking back. I had a lot of friends that I thought were friends that maybe weren't, that maybe were acquaintances that were it's like fun for a season, or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, add the pandemic, add me saying things that other people maybe didn't know that I had such an opinion about. And people that didn't really understand or know the true me are like, he's crazy now, or I didn't know he thought this way, or I don't want to see his content. And it's like, out of sight, out of mind. It's like people that I would see around the way would just think to not get in touch or whatever. And I don't blame them for it, but I think that it makes you realize that, what really is a friend. There's so many people that we consider our friends, but what really makes a true friend, and who are the people that you are a true friend to, and how much space do you really have in your day, your mind, your life for those people? How many can you really have? How many do you need? And what I started to realize the more I got into this world is that I wanted to be around people that were hitting. I wanted to be around people that were excelling to a high level, that wanted more out of life. And the more I met people through the account, the more I realized how not that the people that I associated myself with were, especially the ones that, fell away as a result of what I was saying. If you've known me to be a reasonable human being that you have love for many years, and you're going to make an assumption about me based on this and enough that you don't want to be around or don't want to talk to me or whatever, then it's like, that's a kind of a fair weather friend. We can disagree and still be friends. So I did find that people that don't see the world the way that I do, kind of sort of faded away. And it could have been the pandemic. It could have been the natural flow of things, people getting married, having kids, whatever. But in all of the space and all of the emptiness that was left as a result of losing or becoming distant from those people, it made all this space for new people that, in my opinion, make me want to be better. I want to be the worst guy on the team, not the best guy on the team. I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, not the smartest guy in the room. And I think that it's like you don't realize the space that you hold for people that are not really either A, having your best interest in mind, B, will stick it through to you to the end no matter what, love you all the way through, and C, are challenging you to do better and be better. One of the things about Ian, to bring up Official Patriot here again, is every time I hang out with this dude, I'm like, I need to work harder. And there's so many people in my life that don't make me feel that way. They make you feel like I'm good. You compare yourself to them indirectly, and not that you're trying to figure out, you're not that you're trying to rank them, but it's like the impact that people around you have on the way that you move through the world is profound. I had a buddy of mine that stayed with me a few years back that went to CrossFit every day, and I would go for runs and whatever. I'd walk the dog. I didn't really think much of it. And this guy would get up and he'd be going to CrossFit, and I'm like, I'm tired, but this dude's ripping at CrossFit. And when he got back, if I didn't do something, I felt like kind of like a bum. And he made me, through his example, want to exercise every day. I was already doing shit, but I wasn't pushing it. And when I didn't want to go, I didn't go, but he was going all the time, even when it was rainy or cold or whatever. And it was just a huge lesson where it's like, if I'm talking to a person that's winning, that's trying to advance, that's trying to get better, that's trying to grow, they're changing the way that I see the world. And if I'm around people that stagnate, people that are stuck in their own trap, people that do the same old thing and have the exact same results, it's affecting how I flow. And I want to be around people that do great things. I want to be around people that are trying to get better all the time, because it will ultimately make me better. The world is a competition, and we're constantly training ourselves based on what we input here constantly. So with all the people that I lost, I gained so much more in so many other ways.
Well, and that just shows your mindset too, that, you kind of reverse engineered the lead by example to where you surround yourself with people that inspire you. And if somebody is doing something that you're not doing, you're improving yourself. Where I know a lot of people that I've lost, just in general, not even to talk about myself, but a lot of people will look at somebody that are doing things that they should be doing, and they take it as an attack to their own ego. And so instead of trying to improve themselves, they're like, oh, well, screw this guy, he's changed. Like I noticed that I put out my book yesterday or 2 days ago or something like that. And so I have a personal Instagram page with all my friends that I grew up with. I'm not talking shit about anybody, but so I posted my book on my personal Instagram page, and it got 5 likes. Yeah. And then I posted it on, my Lord Petty page, where I don't know, it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, where you start connecting with like-minded people, where everybody's in the space trying to be better. And then I felt and I wasn't looking for anybody, I didn't need a hug, oh, I love you, I need your book, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But it just kind of showed the comparison between, okay, here were the people that I was hanging out pre-pandemic that were doing what they're doing. And then here's people that I met when I'm trying to come up, and they're giving me the same energy. So it's just a better energy to surround yourself with. As soon as you start trying, you just fall into that pocket, I guess. And I agree with everything you're saying. Ironically, I want to ask you about the name Take Naps, because I kind of have a joke about that, because I feel like you never sleep. I feel like you'll be posting a video at I kind of made a joke earlier, you'll be running at 3 a.m. and I'll see you up. You'll be posting another reel by 7 a.m. That's why his name is Take Naps, because he doesn't sleep at night.
Yeah, Dude, it's weird. When I was a kid, I'll never forget. I'll remember it the rest of my life, like vividly. My parents made me go to sleep and I wasn't tired. And I didn't have a TV in my room. I'll never forget as long as I live. And I don't remember what happened that day, if I woke up late or I don't remember those specific details, but I remember laying in bed and I just couldn't sleep. And no matter how hard I tried, there was just nothing I could do. And, as a person that spends a lot of time thinking, which I don't know if other people do, but I think about shit all the time. I'm like constantly thinking and scheming. What's my next move? What am I going to do tomorrow? I have a tough time turning it off. I just remember sitting there staring at the ceiling for hours and being like, this is the most excruciating thing I could imagine, because I didn't have a TV in my room. I knew I had something to do the next day. I hate not being able to go to sleep. And I remember just saying to myself, when I'm an adult, I'm going to never go to sleep unless I want to go to sleep. Nobody's going to ever make me go to bed and deal with this. And it was for that reason that I hated jobs that made me wake up early. I never wanted to just be like, I got to go to bed. I got to get some sleep, because I don't know. I just hated that. So I was like, a luxury that I could have would be to never have to set an alarm in the morning, always wake up on my own. I was never a morning person. And I always felt like I was most productive in the evening. It was like whenever I wanted to work on websites, I'd work till 3-4 in the morning. When I'm keyed in and I'm cooking and I'm scheming and I'm really making progress, you don't want to go, well, I probably should get some sleep. I never really felt that way. So I was just like, if I could live a lifestyle where I never set an alarm, how luxurious would that be? How amazing would that be? If I never had to go to a place, if I never had to answer to anybody, if I never had to do this, if I could be completely and totally free, what would that be like? And there's one of my favorite quotes is, an unhurried sense of time is in itself a form of wealth. And I kept thinking about that, like never setting an alarm is wealth. Never doing anything you don't want to do is true freedom. Could I create something like that? So I'm always up at night. If I'm going, I'm going. If it's worth doing, I'll do it. I don't feel the need to be up in the morning, even though it probably would be good for my health. And I'm sure one day I'll have to, if there's a baby or whatever. But for now, it is a luxury that I just do whatever I want whenever. And it just so happens to be that, that the night is when I feel the most productive sometimes.
Have you ever answered that question before?
The take naps question?
Yeah.
Probably 50 to 100 times. Yeah.
Because I've never heard it. And I found it so, because that's what this podcast is about, man. I love just getting like the behind the story like that, like the childhood story and all that. Like it's hilarious. The character development.
It's, the abbreviated version, the abridged version, which I usually say is that I bought and sold domain names since 2005. I bought my first domain name in like 2001. But I bought and sold domain names. And what I learned about the domain name industry, which I thought would make me rich, is that you have to buy exact match or dictionarywords.com. And if you can't buy those, which many of them were taken, computer.com, headphones.com, whatever, all those were taken, you had to buy memorable, short English words that were low in letters and low in syllables. And things that are easy to spell, memorable, are a normal phrase that you would encounter out in the world and were easy to pronounce and say over the radio, for example, were more valuable. If I own refrigerators.com or if I own Icebox is shorter. It's less syllables. It's easier to spell. If I say Icebox on the radio or something, it could be a more valuable name than refrigerators. In addition to that, Icebox could be any number of things. If you own refrigerators.com, you kind of can only sell refrigerators. Nobody's going to go there and buy a stove, for example. Whereas if you owned Icebox, it could be Icebox as a catchy name that happens to have freezers or whatever, but you could have other things. So when I was registering my Instagram handle in 2013, I was like, I didn't want to just get my exact name. I didn't want to get something that was an English word, but I wanted it to be short, memorable, and succinct. So I just started with the base word of naps, 4 letters, easy to remember, easy to spell. And I just looked for variations around it. And I tried like, I love naps, I want a nap, and all these other things. And when take naps appeared as available, I'm like, 8 letters, 4 syllables, or 8 letters, 2 syllables. That's a dream in the .com world. Easy to spell, easy to remember, and it's a phrase that you would encounter in real life. For example, if it was naps take, these are English words, it's short, it's memorable, same amount of syllables, but it doesn't appear in conversation. So that was one of the reasons why I jumped on it. And I honestly just didn't know where it would even go. This was 2013, and it was a far distant belief that it would ever amount to anything.
Man, you are very, very calculated. If anybody out there's ever hating on my dude Bobby Sauce, I'm like, man, it's not a freaking accident. It's very calculated. I bet that buying domains, that's got to be impossible nowadays.
Well, it's certainly more challenging, but there was like a heyday of domain buying in the early 2000s. And like all great things, especially a young entrepreneur, you make mistakes. I bought too many not great names, and as opposed to a small amount of very valuable names. I had at one point I had over 600 domain names, which are between $8 to $12 a year to renew. So I was spending $5,000-$6,000 on all these domains, thinking they would get me rich. And had I just spent $5,000 on one name, I probably would have sold it for 10 times what I paid. So I learned the hard way. And now you can still buy and sell them. It's just that the marketplace has a way of circumventing the gatekeepers, our modern world. There was no way to get famous as a musician 10 years ago other than the tried and true method. It's mixtape, it's get noticed by a guy, it's get a record deal, and there it is. Now, you don't even need that. You can circumvent them. You can do it on SoundCloud, Spotify. You can self-produce. In order to get on the radio 20 years ago, you had to go through the stuff. You had to sweep the floor at the radio station. You had to do the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Top 40 hour or whatever, and your local college station or whatever. Now, microphone at your house, Facebook, YouTube, the rest, you can do that. So the world kind of rises to meet the marketplace, and they find ways to circumvent the gatekeepers. In 2000 to 2000, I want to say 8, there was only one game in town. There was 50 guys that owned all the best domain names in the world. And they were like, F everybody, they're a $5 million a pop. And as a result, people like me were like, well, that's how you get rich. How do I get my way in? And then over time, Google search queries in the search bar, social media, and all these other things became other routes for people to find your information. And the domain name, as it were, lost a huge amount of value because these gatekeepers had gotten way too aggressive. To this day, there are probably 50,000 or 10,000 domain names that would be absolutely grand slam hit brands that never were able to become a brand because the gatekeepers got a little bit too greedy. That's why you have companies like Google, Lyft, Uber, Yahoo, names that mean nothing because search.com was gone and cab.com was gone and ride.com was gone and whatever. So you can still do it, but the strategy is different now.
That's so interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. That was my zone. I was a web developer for 13 years full time. That's what I did. Bought domain names, invested in websites, built websites, did social accounts, and the rest.
What about your public speaking experience? Because you fell in with Turning Point recently, right? So you've been giving some speeches. I mean, you've been doing some pretty big podcasts and all that kind of stuff. Did you have any prior sort of public speaking type things or?
In the domain world, I kept going to these domain conferences, and I was like, "This is how I'm going to get rich. I love the internet. This is the entry point. You know, this is the phone number of the internet." And to me, it represented. You know, I wasn't so interested in all the people that were building products because it was almost like, think about it in terms of real estate. It's just the easiest way to digest it. I was like, these are the landowners, and you have all these people building houses and skyscrapers and the like, but they always need that land. You can't build a hotel in the sky. Yeah. So I was like, this is the root. So let me go to the domain owners. That's the gatekeeper of the internet. To me, it just represented the most centralized and focused root of all of the internet of the information superhighway. So I went to these domain conferences and I was like, I need to be in here somehow. And I quickly realized that there were no developers really like me. There was not very many developers. There were big time developers, but there was no one at the bottom that was making sites $1,000 to $5,000, $1,000 to $10,000. So I tried desperately to be that guy, the developer guy. And there was no other web developers around. And as a result, I just kept showing up. And it's like, I would be there. I'd be asking questions. I'd be sitting in the front row. I was the young guy with the suit on while everybody else was kind of rich and chilling. And I just was hungry. So I built a good group of relationships there as being the developer guy. And that's kind of how I got my web development business kind of started and off the ground, is getting little gigs inside there. And then as a result, I would be chirping the owners and say, hey, I'd love to do a speech on development. I'd love to teach something that I know like the back of my hand. So I started kind of talking about how you would develop your domain names and how you would build sites out. And even if I was speaking to 5 people, I'd have 25 slides. I'd rehearse it. I'd have the cadence down, every single slide perfectly buttoned up. And I just trained myself to be what I believed was a world-class public speaker. And then one of those led to the next, where I spoke in downtown Manhattan, in Portugal, in Dubai, and then here in South Florida. And it was always great and cool, but it was never highly purpose driven. I never felt like that was the end of the road for me, but I knew that I had to develop this skill. And I knew that if I became sharp, it would come into play later. And those skills have proved very fruitful now that I'm talking about this stuff, and then even starting to do some comedy as well.
Are you doing stand-up as well?
I did my first stand-up show opening for Chad Prather here in Florida about a month and a half ago, and it was a blast. And I actually have 3 more shows booked with him in November, some kind of opening spots, and I'm kind of actively seeking how I can go about getting more of them, so I can kind of refine that skill and put the real world to the digital world as yet another potential avenue for distributing the message.
Man, Bobby, you're the fucking man, dude. I have so much respect for you, dude. I'm looking at our ticker here. We're kind of starting to run down on time, so I'm gonna start winding this down, dude. But I just gotta say, man, you motivate the hell out of me, dude. And it's cool just seeing. It's cool for me having people that I can like reach out to and look up to, and kind of, like I soaked up a lot of game talking to you today, and it's cool just seeing how those. Because I'm kind of in a phase of my life where the pieces aren't quite making sense, but occasionally I'll be like, okay, that's why that happened. That's why that happened. So it's cool to be able to talk to a guy like you and have you put that into perspective, how all these things happen to put you at where you're at right now, and how you're still just developing skills, man. And, I just wish you the best, man. I hope you come back sometime. Sure. Would love to hear some more about, especially once you get further down your stand-up career, see how that's treating you. Yeah, man. Well, I know we got a minute and a half, but if you want to jump on for another 10 minutes, I'm happy to reconnect and do another 10 minutes or 15 minutes if you want. Yeah, we can do that. Let's do that. Because maybe there's something I could say that could help with what you're talking about for yourself. Let me do this. All right. I'm gonna click out of this really quick, and we're gonna pop back on. All right. All right. There we go. Sorry, it took a second, dude. When I closed it out, it was rendering the previous video. Oh, no worries. I think if there's a nugget in in another few minutes that could help you with whatever you need to know, that could help the people, man. So we might as well. I think a big part of it too is because everybody's on their own little journey. I know, as corny as that sounds, but it's picking up the nuggets and being aware of what's happening, and then taking the things I have this big, I obviously did not come up with this, but there's no losing. There's only learning, Yep. And, it's like you're talking about with your friend with the clothing line. You know, you get around that guy and it makes you want to do better. So it's nice for me, like I said, to talk to guys like you. I say, okay, this guy, he figured it out. He used all these different things because of like my whole thing. I mean, I have an audio background, right? Like I wanted to be an audio engineer. When I was 21, I went to audio school. I wanted to be a music producer, do all this stuff, failed at it miserably. And then I stumbled into producing a podcast for a buddy who was a college radio DJ guy. And he said he wanted to start a podcast and he needed like $4,000 that he didn't have. And I was like, dude, I have everything to do a damn podcast or just recording voice. Like you can go to my house and record a drum set if you need to, you know?
Right.
And so I started producing this podcast for him. And then, you know, I've always kind of been a class clown, always kind of been a funny guy. And then so he said, hey, do you want to be on the show? And I was like, yeah, I'll be on the show. And so I was producing the podcast and I was on the show, and then I got really into it because when I do stuff, I go, you know?
Yeah.
And then so I started doing my own podcast, and that led into the, you know, doing stand up. And so it just kind of these little things. And then having the music equipment, it's like you say, just take these little nuggets, you look back and it makes sense. Like that's why I'm here talking to you right now about politics, you know, because I lost my day job at one point and I was sitting there watching a whole Trump conference. I was watching the whole half hour, whatever it was, of him talking. Then I watched the news later that night, and I really was never into politics. And I was just sitting there like, he didn't say that. That's not what the fuck Big 45 was saying.
Yep.
And so that's how I went down the political rabbit holes. That's just another like another just piece of the puzzle, like putting it all together. And yeah, dude, it just makes sense. I do want to ask you about because I'm into comedy, so I want to ask you about your stand-up. So how long of sets are you doing?
So I did a speech in Texas that wasn't really comedy as much as it was. I had a written speech, and then I did like a kind of a stand-up sort of bit before it. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but it was just kind of not the right environment for just comedy. And that was like 25 minutes. But the show that I did with Chad was a 20-minute spot. He asked me how long I wanted. I think I took about 18 and a half of the 20. And I felt good with that. I wrote it, practiced it, had the whole thing down. Every joke was for the most part pre-written, and it was a blast. And a lot of people are like, wow, 20 minutes. And I just thought to myself, I used to do speeches that were an hour long that I would know what was going on. So 20 minutes when it's jokes, I would love to do more of that. So I would love to get more spots and get better at that craft. But so far I only have just the one show.
So you've never gone to just like a strictly comic open mic? You straight up your first excursion was 20 minutes in front of a real crowd.
Yep. Yeah.
Dude, that is so funny. I don't know.
Comedy club and got paid for it.
I don't know if that would be, because the one thing you got going for you is that it's in front of a home crowd. So people are actually there to see comedy. It's not like an open mic night where it's a bunch of disgruntled open micers just waiting for their turn to get on stage and play comedian. So, and that's just another thing, man. You put everything like your public speaking experience, like being funny through your videos, because now you know, like through doing your videos, okay, what kind of content is funny? What are people going to laugh at? What's going to be impactful? And then you just translate that on a stage, man. It's genius.
I just think, dude, it's the one thing that I've kind of learned over this whole journey is that every way that I thought it had to go is not how it has to go. And every way that I thought, if I followed the rubric set forth by the people that I thought were the way, that's not it. And I refuse to believe that anything has to be done the way it's been done. And I think that my whole life, I always thought this is what had to happen in order for it to work. And what I've learned is that how you want it to happen does more for making it work than doing what you think is supposed to happen. I never wanted to go to comedy clubs and do open mics. I never wanted to pull myself up from the bootstraps in the comedy world. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be on the road, knocking out sets, bombing. I didn't want to do that. And in fact, I never even wanted to really do stand-up comedy. I loved it, appreciated it, and respected and revered people who did. But I never was like, I could see my face up in the lights up there. I always just kind of thought to myself, you know, if I was going to meet the number one musician in the world, I would respect the hell out of them for how much joy they brought people. But I would rather meet a business mogul that created thousands of jobs and moved, employed people and did all these other things. I always was like, that to me is more impactful. It wasn't until later that I realized that a politician or a policymaker, a thought leader was even bigger than a business person. So I was like, I don't want to be a comedian because I'd be selling myself short. I don't want to tell just jokes. And even though it's so crucial in society, just like the musician is, just like the Paul McCartney or whoever else, I was like, I have more to give. I want to see if I can change the world. And even though you could say that the musician changes the world, do they change it as much as the person that moves business, that moves product and employs people and all that, right? And can bring people up in their system? I don't know. But when I realized that the thought leader, the policy maker, the politician, or even just, I guess you could just say the thought leader in general, maybe it's politics, could have even more impact than that by changing how people think, the way they do business and the culture, that was like the pinnacle to me. So when I looked at comedy, I was like, that's just a piece. I don't want to be the comedian. So now when I look at it, I'm like, I don't want to do all those things. What if I just didn't? What if I just don't do that? What if I was able to generate the attention to a show and it just wasn't, what if it wasn't even a comedy show? What if it was a political, I don't even know, but that's the whole thing, is that the way that you think it has to go, it's like you're usually interrupted by somebody that's doing it the other way, that's not following that rubric. So I just look at it like every single thing in life, and I've said this a lot recently, it's like, to be like the 1%, you have to ignore the 99%. If I think that this is the way it's got to go, everybody thinks that's the way it's got to go. All the people that go right when everyone goes left are the people that ultimately are the ones that rise to the top. And I'm just doing the things that I think are fun and interesting. And I'm building that skill set, and I take everything very seriously. And it's like, as long as I see progress and I know I'm advancing in the right direction, to me, it's all like a foregone conclusion. It's like, I'm going to make it. I'm making it. It's working. It doesn't matter. And all of the things that I desire and could foresee happening will happen in time, and they'll navigate my way so long as I keep planting seeds. I told Chad Prather when I was on his show in Texas, I was like, hey, if you ever need anybody to open for you, I'll open for you. I'll fly there, put myself up in a hotel, anything you want for free. I'll do it for free. And I didn't tell him I had never done one before. I just told him that was the case. Chad, being an awesome dude, stand-up dude, a guy that says something and then comes through on his word, which is so rare. He hits me up a couple months later. You want to open for me for this show? How long you want? I said, 20 minutes. He goes, done. So I was like, all right, I'm going to burn this mother down if you're going to give me the 20 minutes. Rehearse it, make sure it's the best there ever was. And just like that, it was created based on all of these other pieces. And for somebody to say, for me to look at it and say, I have a check from my first show in front of whatever, 150, 200 people, whatever it was, to me was just yet another kind of dollar in the Alex Jones was right jar of my own mind, and being like, you made this happen. Even though even though the stars aligned, it's like, you said this was going to happen. You figured out a way to make it happen. And here's one example. Now do it again, 10 times more, 1,000 times more. Bro,
it's so beautiful hearing you say that, because, so my social circle down here, I moved to this, I'm pretty new to Austin. And so my stomping grounds is the comedy clubs. I hang out with a lot of comedians. And I don't straight up say it because it's a very offensive thing to say to people when they devote their whole life to a craft. But like, I look at it and everything you were saying is like, okay, I'm not crazy because you're the embodiment of it. Because in my mind, it's like, I don't want to constantly just be the dancing monkey. Like, I like being funny, but I don't want to get up there and do, and then have my mood depending on if I make these fucking idiots laugh or not. You know what I mean? Like, I have more to say. I want to give more. You know what I mean? And I read a book by James Altucher. Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
And it's called Skip the Line. And he basically talks about all the principles in this book. It was another like reaffirmation in my brain, be like, okay, I'm not crazy, but it's one thing to read it in a book from some stranger. I'm hearing you say everything that you did is basically the same concept, where you said, no, I don't have to do these routes of going and bombing in these shitholes. I don't have to do this. I can go and use my skills and get on stage and do 20 minutes. Like that's it. If I were to tell that story, like if I would have been, oh, I got this buddy that did what you just told me, the average comic, they're not going to believe that.
Right.
They're just going to be like, no, that's not a thing. Like you got to eat shit for 10 years. And I would say, no, I don't have 10 years to go out and eat shit.
Exactly. Dude, it doesn't, that's the thing is like, again, I think about it every day. It's if you want to be like the 1%, you have to ignore the 99%. That's just facts. It just is what it is. And I stole that quote from a domain guy. One of the domainer guys, one of the biggest ones in the industry, said that a very long time ago in his blog. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's like, how many people do you know that are in the 1%? And a person I look up to tremendously, Andy Frisella, he talks about stuff like this too. And people in his orbit, it's like, if this person, and Brad Lee talks about it, it's like, if this person is not where you want to be, why are you taking advice from them? Why are you going to look to what they have to say? And you know, the other thing too is I think that everybody should think this way naturally, whatever, but you should believe that you could be the greatest to ever do it. And I look at all these examples in life of people that, and this is a quote from one of my speeches, is like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and every other person that you revere was a regular average person that decided to be great. It's like these people weren't just great. They chose to be great. They chose to exude greatness. They chose to be different and better. And that's why people like us will revere their name until the end of time. Somebody like George Washington, I look up to more than most people that have ever lived. And it's like, this was a regular dude. And same with somebody like Abraham Lincoln. It's like, grew up poor in a shack with however many people, you know, these are regular dudes that decide to be great. I'm going to go through my life and not think that I couldn't be the best to ever do it. Well, that's a certain way to guarantee that I won't be. So it's like, I'm not going to do the shit that every other person said they're going to do. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to do the work. It's just, I'm not going to approach the idea that there's a rubric for success. And if you don't follow it, it won't work, because I used to do that and that shit didn't work. It was when I started doing the things that came to me naturally, instinctively, that the marketplace made the road rise to meet me. There's this great quote that I loved back in the day that was something along the lines of, you know, if you it's like the universe makes way for those who know where they are going. And it's like the road will rise to meet the person that's doing it right, the right way. So long as you're putting in the work, so long as you're building up the skills, your direction will end up being 10 to 15 degrees to the left or right of what you thought it was going to be. And so long as you stay true to the reasons why you went there in the first place and don't feel sidetracked by this cash or this way that you think it has to be, you'll end up making it there. When I was 18, I had a website in my small town that had made it to the newspaper, that everybody in the town knew me from this website. I had a blog, I had photos, I had like basically the equivalent of a Facebook page in 2002 at my high school. And I was like locally famous for this website where the parents and all the kids and everybody just knew who I was. And because I believed that I had to follow this path, I started building websites to make money, when had I followed what I was already doing, the thing that I wanted to do, the thing that I was passionate about and loved, I'd probably be a cajillionaire by now. I would have had a blog way before anybody else. But it was a blessing, because young me was immature and would not have been able to handle this. I would have thought I was too hot. I would have thought I was hot shit. I would have disrespected people and burned bridges and been like, I'm untouchable. If I had been given the platform I have now when I was a 20-year-old man, I probably would have burned the shit down. So as I slogged through the mud for 10 years, 15, 12 years, thinking that I had to follow the rubric, it was when I started going outside of the box and doing what I just instinctively knew, that it actually started to click and work. And again, it's like the dots connecting, going back. It was a blessing that I didn't, because I don't think I would have had the maturity level or any of the things that I have now that have made this just the right place at just the right time. And good thing I did all that hard work and struggled for all those years, because that's now part of the book of my life and the book of my story. Every story is like, okay, if I'm doing this, does this make the book or does it not make the book? When you look back on the biography of your life, is this going to be in it or not? And it's like, we have to try to lean more towards the things that would make the book versus not. It's going to the place that you don't want to go, even though you don't want to go there, and putting yourself out there feeling uncomfortable. It's slogging your way through the dark clubs in Austin and being like, this is fucked up, I got to find another way, and then just finding it. That's the turning point. That's the type of shit that's in the book. That's the stuff that's in the story that everybody loves to have. Like, that's the whole point. If I was to tell you that I made an Instagram video for the first time and it went to the moon, you'd be like, this motherfucker is lucky. Instead, I ate shit for all these years and did all these things that taught me how to do it right, and then just happened to hit the golf club at the right angle that I hit one hole in one. And then I didn't parade around and think I'm on the PGA Tour. I got on the course and kept practicing. And I said, if I've been willing to put in the work effort all this time, now I'm seasoned. If you're going to give me one shot, I'm going to rip on this. And that's exactly what I did when this video hit. And that's the reason why I'm even here today. That's why it really gasses me that a person like you, I don't care how many followers or what you have, I don't care who you are, that you're like, dude, I look up to what you're doing. That's the type of shit that gives me, that fucking gasses me up, dude. And that's the type of thing where I'm like, if you want to change the world, it's changed by your actions more than anything else. The culture that you set and the example that you set is far more world changing than anything that you could ever do outwardly or say. It's the example that you set that really makes people be like, oh, fuck. Like when I remember when Donnie was running, I just sat back one day and I thought, if you were to frame this guy's life up, I don't care what he says, you got a guy that was like internationally known and loved universally by all peoples of the world, pretty much, with the exception of a very small minority. And this guy is set, no problem. Yet he decides to have half the world think he's a fucking racist xenophobe and lose all this stuff and go through all this knowing that he's going to get machine gunned in the media and take all this. Why? It's not about what he said. It's about what he did. And I'm not here to fawn over Donnie, but it just goes to show that it's like when people look at the context of your existence and what you decided to do, that to me is the true greatness. It's far superior than anything that you say and anything that you individually do outwardly. It's the totality of all your stuff together and how important it is and the example that it sets. That's why somebody like George Washington, forget being the first president. It's like George Washington could have been the king of America and decided not to be. I don't care how many books he writes. That shit speaks volumes to me beyond anything I could ever imagine. And that's the type of thing that I want people to look at me and think as I navigate through this existence.
Do you have time? Can I get you one more question from you? You got time?
Yeah.
So, do you ever, because you're such a creative dude, right? And you're so like forward thinking and always, does the term conservative does that ever bother you? Like, do you identify with that term?
Well, yes and no. I think that one of the, if there was a gun to my head and I had to say yes or no, I would say yes, because I do think that it's important to be on it. Yes, that it bothers you, or no? Yes, that I identify as.
Okay.
It doesn't bother me. Because at the end of the day, these are all just words and sounds. And I know that that's kind of a stupid way of framing it, but I consider myself to be somewhat of a wordsmith. And I really appreciate words and communication. Clearly, this is the business that we're in. So I think about words a lot. And I'm like, this word can be interpreted in however many ways. That was one of the things I loved about English class is like, I could write something that could be you could give me an A+100. That's just what I feel and think. It's just my assembly of words. It's how I can make you feel from it. It's not even what it says so much as the message that you receive. So when I think of conservative, it's like, okay, this is a label that generally I would say, well, there's certain things that people in the conservative movement, so to speak, are identified as being part of. So I don't like that the label is associated with certain things. But generally speaking, words and classifications are important to give a general idea of the direction that you tend to lean or the team that you tend to be on more often than not. I like Republican and Democrat even less, but I understand that at the end of the day, it's how they're interpreting that word, not so much the word itself. And what I mean by that is that, yes, I'm a Republican, I guess, but I'm not only that. Yes, I'm a conservative, but I'm not only that. You could compare me to 50 other conservatives and I would be different, 50 other Republicans and I would be different. But I'm most certainly not, generally speaking, a liberal. I'm most certainly not a progressive. I'm most certainly not a Democrat, more so than I'm not this side. So I'm okay with the label in the sense that you're trying to classify me in the library of your mind. But I don't go out there and be like, I'm a conservative, even though I probably would be that more than anything else. I'm probably more of a libertarian, but some people don't like those words mixing. I just generally feel like it's important to be part of a team. It's important to generally classify yourself so people understand how you're viewing the world, but to not let those labels pigeonhole you into saying I can be summarized by anybody that says a conservative is X, if that makes sense.
No, that makes absolute sense, man, because that's always kind of been my beef with the word itself, because I'm not like when I think conservative, I think somebody that sits around and accepts the way things are and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, you put it in a good perspective, man, because it's just kind of a word. It's a team, but you can still be yourself within whatever those realms are. And I think that's why I was so drawn to your content when I found it too, because you were this like conservative guy, but you weren't just sitting there regurgitating just the same, just blah, like there was humor with it. And like I said, man, I got nothing but respect for you, dude. You're obviously just a brilliant guy, man. I'm excited to see what all is going to happen for you, dude. And I appreciate you talking to me, dude. And I hope we can keep, do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
And
I appreciate it as well. And dude, this is another thing. And maybe it's more for you than it is for the audience, but here's just my 2 cents, whether you want it or not, is that the way that I kind of look at the game, and some people will disagree with me on this, but it's just my approach. You got to go with your gut. You got to go with your instinct. The way that I look at it is that I have a primary objective. And as long as it fits my objective, generally speaking, and it aligns with my values, it's usually a good thing to follow. So I think in terms of this project, it's like, what is the one thing, if I had to pick one thing, if I had to prioritize the 10 things that I want, and I only got number 1 and all the rest fell, would it still be good? Right? When you're like, the best example I can give is like when I went to buy a house, I was like, I want this location, this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, a dishwasher, whatever. At the end of it all, if I only got number 1, it probably would have been okay. And that is what I got when I ended up buying my house. I had to be okay with losing the rest. The one thing that I want, which I think is important for everybody to identify, is what is your primary target for why you're doing this? And what would be the thing that would take you to the next level that will give you the purpose or whatever that you seek? And for me, I've identified that thing is distribution. I want people to see it, as many people as possible. The message goes the furthest. Distribution, that's the goal. So if I am putting something out, my effort is always to reach distribution. Now, obviously in the content, I have all these other things and all this other purpose that I'm trying to incorporate to it. But generally speaking, I want as much distribution as possible. Now, if I'm going to make a piece of content that may hit my 3rd or 5th or 7th priority, but it may limit my number 1 priority distribution, is it worth doing? If I'm playing the strategy game, the long game, do I want to do it? I think that a lot of people go in guns blazing in these social platforms and they'll say all the words and they'll say all the things they want to say. And as a result, because the structure is as it is, they get suppressed. They say things that are on the border. They think, I'm a comedian. Let me dance the edge. Let me spice it up. Nothing wrong with that. However, what's your main priority? For me, it's distribution. So it's like, I want to talk about the things that I deem to be very bad in society. I want to talk about the things that you can't talk about on YouTube, that you can't talk about on Spotify, that you can't talk about. But I understand that with more distribution, my ability to have an impact in those things will increase over time. If I'm coming into the town square I can run into the town square with a megaphone and burn the place down and yell to everybody, and then they're going to kick me out. And then I'm silent. The right strategy, in my opinion, is I'm going to noodle around in there and I'm going to find the right people that are near the guy that's on the megaphone, the one that's going to take all the shots. And I'm going to whisper in their ear and be like, down the street at 8:00, I'm having a secret meeting. That way I fly under the radar in the town square. I don't get suppressed. Nobody kicks me out and I get to participate in the game. Online, we are being subjected to suppression. And if we can find ways to color between the lines and dance in the shadows until we can get more people that are in the town square to come to our secret hideout, our mission is accomplished. So when you're creating content, think about what your main priority is. And it's like, if you may want to talk about something that might be deemed, I don't even want to say offensive, but something that may not meet your primary objective, color between the lines to achieve whatever your objective is. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, I want impact, I want distribution. So it's like, if I'm going to make a joke that maybe is a little bit more off color, that might ding me, that might suppress me for a time, how do I dance around it, get the point across, and increase towards my number one goal? I know that's a long-winded way of saying it, but I think a lot of people make that, I guess you could say, mistake where they like go in guns blazing on what they want to do or say. And as a result, the structure sees them and crushes them before they have a chance to get distribution.
And I've experienced that. I've been that was a nugget, dude. That was a nugget.
Because your stuff, because like I've seen some of your stuff where like, this is the thing. There's a few people, which I will not mention, that like they realize that sometimes it's shock that gets eyeballs, right? So they'll lean in to being the devil. There's this dude, Martin Shkreli, who was I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
Increase the medication 1600%, whatever. There was an interview that he did where he was like, everybody thought I was the villain. So eventually I just leaned into it. Then I just became the villain. I just said shit that I knew would rip them up, that I knew they would hate. And he became the villain that everyone already labeled him to be. And he leaned into it. I think online, it's easy to be like, shock works or whatever. And I'm going to lean into being that person that's going to say the thing that's spicy, not taking into consideration perhaps that it may actually hurt me more than it helps me. And if I can find a way to be more creative about it, would it achieve my objective? It's almost like, there are comedians that don't swear, and those comedians make more money, book more corporate gigs, whatever else. And there's a lot of comedians that I follow that be like, well, it wouldn't be authentic to me. I get that totally. However, it's like, what about the middle ground? What if you could find a way to say it, but not say it? Talk about what you're want to say, but make it easier for you. Find a more efficient path to get to the same destination that it could be just a little off. I used to swear all the time. And I'm like, my videos where I swear, first of all, people give me a hard time about it. But on top of it, I see that they get less distribution. They get less monetized or not monetized at all. In the future, if my goal is distribution, does it play into my goal? That's the whole point where I was like, wait a second. What do I really want? I want to say F this and shit this or whatever. But if I think that this is going to get me faster distribution, how can I say it and be more colorful? I could say it maybe on a live, but maybe not on a long form video. And I'm not suppressing myself. I'm just playing the game. And I just think that a lot of people kind of miss that, where they're like, I'm not going to do what they tell me. Fuck the censors, whatever. All right. I get that. But I want to be in the town square. And I want to make sure that I'm achieving my objective, which is distribution. And if I can't get in because I'm on the blacklist, I'm fucked. So I just feel like that's a really important lesson that I feel like some people miss in this game that we're in. And, it's like your super off-color comedian of yesteryear, who I certainly wish there was more of. A new guy coming up has to be like, what am I going to do? And I'm not saying don't be natural to the comedy. I'm not saying don't be authentic. I'm just saying play the game to achieve the objective, and know that you have that in there, and try to get to your destination before they crush you for something that's not that's going to make your life harder. It's not about changing yourself. It's just about playing the game, because it all is a game at the end. And I think that how we choose to play it, life, business, whatever, is the difference between being on the field and not.
Bars, dude. It makes sense. It makes, because I lost my previous account, and that was pretty much I was devastated. I was like, okay, what did I get out of that? I made some people laugh, but it hurt me. Again, it comes back to being the dancing monkey thing. So it's like, it's just real nice to talk to you, bro. Like, I just really appreciate you sitting here and, breaking things down, man. I hope anybody listening to this gets, as much value as I did out of it. And, like I said, dude, I'm not trying to. Now I don't even want to swear.
Dude, there you go, man. There you go, dude. Look, it's small strategy changes like that make the difference over time. They compound. There's a lesson there, and I think that it's like, what do you want to accomplish? And if you get the number one and you get nothing else, then it still is a win. So it's like, if you could still make the person laugh, if you could still get the point across, you could say slob your knob, but now you're not saying it, but you're saying it. It's just a game. It's not about changing who you are. It's just about strategizing. It's like back when they were in the Revolutionary War, why did we win? These dudes were in bright red jackets walking in a straight line, and we're up in the tree.
What an analogy. That's so funny.
They looked at that like that was unwise, but it's like, that's how you win the game. You just do it a little different. And I think that that's the type of stuff where it's like, if we could all just shuck and jive a little bit, we would be moving the culture forward, because with no voice, you can't do anything. Jay-Z, you can't help the poor if you're one of them. I don't want to not say what I can't say, or I don't want to say the things that can't be said. But I know that if I can't say anything, then I have no impact. And even though the social things are, they're here for a reason, they're here for a season, something else is going to come about and whatever. For now, I want to be on the field. And that's where I need to be, because I'm not going to help anybody if I'm on the sidelines or God forbid, outside the stadium. So I want more people in the mix. And if they can be a little bit more tactical, we would all be in a better position. When you're thinking about what you post online, and this goes for you and for everybody, we have to think about who gets value from this and who will obtain value by redistributing this. If I have a video that I agree with that has one off-color thing that might take me out, if you lose 5% of people, think about the impact of that 5% spread over the long haul. It's like, what if instead of saying that, I say like pound my dirt star or something like that, where it's still funny. It's a way around saying stick it up my ass, but you still get it. And what I learned about this, which was the craziest thing of it all, which I never would have anticipated, is by playing the game, I created a unique angle that I didn't even foresee by being strategic. And now I have all these other sayings. There's 1,000 other sayings that I was using to avoid saying the things that I couldn't say. And those things were part of the reason why I was able to obtain such a track in the first place. Instead of saying stick it up my ass, I said put it in my balloon knot. And it's like, now that's a hilarious take on it. The tactic actually ended up being more beneficial than saying what I thought I had to say. Doing what I thought I had to do actually would have done. And I think that a lot of those things start to become more evident as you start playing it as a strategic, tactical, assassin, as opposed to just like coming in guns blazing like everybody else does. Be the 1%.
It spices it up. And then if you're doing a stand-up set or something like that, if you're working 90% clean, and if you do throw that F-bomb in there, it's actually going to be impactful.
Right.
It's going to actually really hit. Speaking of, really quick here, when you put together your set, did you write all new material, or did you kind of go through some old videos to pull all that, or what did that process look like?
I figured it's like, I want to show up. If people are going to pay money to be there, and they weren't there to see me necessarily, some of them were, I just wanted them to not hear a thing they had ever heard. I was like, I gotta do this is my first show, you know?
You wrote a brand new fresh 20.
I wrote a fresh 20, and you know what I did, dude, this is the thing, man. It's like, I have always found that whatever I set my mind to doing, it just works. My dad has said that to me multiple times in the past. He's like, name one thing that you've tried to do and really put your heart into it and it didn't work. And I'm like, that's a really good point. So it's like, okay, if I was to go all in on this, what would I do? So I went to comedy shows around me, specifically political comedy shows and others, to just see the scene. I became a tactical person. I'm like, I want to see how he opens it, how he handles this, how he does 60 minutes. I want to see what I like about the openers and don't like about the openers. And in the last show, I was watching JP Sears here in Florida, is when I realized every single comedian opens up with local stuff. And it's the local stuff that really hits, because it's like, that's right down the street. So I was like, I know this area I'm going to do the show in. I have a perfect bit for that area that they'll know I wrote just for them, for just that town. And the first 8 to 10 minutes of it was focused around that thing. So they knew it was there. And then I went into the little bit more of the general stuff that I knew already that they would like. And it formulated this nice cohesive unit. And then because I wrote it and because I practiced it and because I practiced the cadence, I had a callback at the end that they actually said before I even said it. And you know what a callback is? Like when I referenced the thing earlier. So I was like,
no, callbacks are hard hitting, dude. So did you have a reference sheet at all, or did you have it locked in?
I wrote on a card that was about this big. I wrote some points, and there was one moment that I kind of forgot where I was for a second. And
those
I
are dangerous moments,
and it was too small to even read. And I was like, and then it came back to me. I rehearsed the 20-minute set in full, spoken out loud, probably at least, I'd say like 25 times to myself.
Damn, dude.
Including that day. I did it like 3 times out loud to myself that day and made sure that I had everything memorized all the way through.
Yeah, you're a different breed, man, because I see people doing the same 10 minutes all around town for the last year. So that's
There was a guy that performed at one of the comedy shows that I saw that I had seen 6 months earlier do the same set. And I knew the jokes, and I'm like, yo, this dude's never going anywhere. And it's like, dude, I'll spare the whole story, but I went one time, and we can close with this. I went and I saw Jordan Belfort at the Wolf of Wall Street tell a story. He did a presentation here in town, and he said, the difference between a person that gets super rich and a guy that does pretty well is when they decide that what they have is enough. He's like, when I was in college, I used to sell popsicles on the beach. And the difference between me and the other guys that sold popsicles is when they sold their whole cooler of popsicles, they would screw off, drink, talk to chicks, and get drunk the rest of the day. When I finished a cooler of popsicles, I thought, how do I sell 2 coolers of popsicles, 3 coolers of popsicles? If I think I'm going to make $5 million in my lifetime, I'm going to make $5 million or less. I'll never make 10. I'll never make 20, because I know that this is where I have set the bar. This is where I'll be comfortable. If you say that this is what you're going to be, that's what you're going to end up being. If you don't shoot for the top, if you don't think that you can always get better, if you don't have the perpetual thirst for more, you're not going to hit it. And that's why there's a 1%, because 99% of people don't think like that. And that's why people like us, people that even think this way, people that even take the time to believe that they could be that way, those are the only people that can do it. Not the ones necessarily that will, but the only ones that can. So it's like, if you can, now if the impetus is on you, will you put in the time? Will you never get up? Do you believe it? When you're down, will you believe you'll go back up? And will you refuse to stop? And as long as you do that, it's like, all I got to do is watch it happen now.
That's a whole lot of game for free, dude. Once again, bro, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, dude. I really appreciate you coming on here, man. And like I said, I just look forward to see what you're going to do, man. You're a great guy, man.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. And let's do another one soon.